Welcome back to the DLJonesBooks show. Today's episode, I'm going to be talking about the new Netflix superhero TV series, Jupiter's Legacy. It came out, I'm not sure what day, one day last week. I kind of watched it. I kind of piddled through it from the time it came out until just finished it up yesterday. And I want to talk about it. We'll get in on that right after the intro. Welcome to the DL Jones Book Show. I'm your host, DL Jones. And like I said just before the intro, I'm going to be talking about Jupiter's Legacy. Now, Jupiter's Legacy, actually, before this ever was announced on Netflix or anything like that, I actually never heard of it. But when I saw the first images a while back, I saw it was a superhero show. I like superhero shows, so I was down. So of course, when it came out, I had to take a look at it. I had to see what it was about. But if you never heard of Jupiter's Legacy is based on a comic book. It's based on a comic book of the same name. It was published by Image Comics a long time ago, and it's one of the properties that's created by Mark Millar. Or Mark Millar. I've heard his name pronounced two different ways. I'm not sure if it's Millar or Millar. I don't know. But anyway, if you remember a few years back, Netflix signed some kind of rights deal with Mark Millar for all of his comic book properties. Mark Millar, if you don't know, he's the one that created Kick-Ass. He also created the Kingsman series. And those two properties are really the only properties I know of about him. But I do know that he has done several different comic books. Of course, they're not as popular as like Marvel and DC, but he's done some comics that have been pretty well reviewed comics. And when Netflix I think kind of signed this deal with Mark Millar around the time that Disney Plus was announced, and they knew that they was going to lose all of the Marvel, Daredevil, and Luke Cage, and they knew they was going to lose all of that kind of stuff. So they quickly signed like a rights deal with Mark Millar to start producing shows for Netflix, because they were going to need some superhero stuff. So Jupiter's Legacy is one of those shows that come from out of that deal. And when you look at the previews, when I look at the previews, to me it just looks like if you were to take a superhero show with a bunch of superheroes and put it in a story that would be along the lines of something that you would see in like Game of Thrones, something that had like a big story that reached, several centuries and had histories and had a family where you had people vying for different roles and spots and all of this kind of stuff. Another thing I see that compared to in a lot of places is The Godfather Part 2. I haven't watched The Godfather Part 2 in so long, so I couldn't make those comparisons, but when I watched the show, it kind of gave me the type of feel that you get on some episodes when I was watching Game of Thrones. So this is going to be no spoilers. I'm not going to spoil anything. I'm just going to be telling you, just a general what this show is about, what I thought of it and stuff like that, without getting too much into spoilers, because this is one of those shows that have it tries to be a pretty deep story. And I know when you watch shows like this, well, me personally, when I watch shows like this, I like to watch them unfold in front of me before my eyes and figure things out when the show is expecting me to figure things out, and not necessarily be spoiled ahead of time. When it comes to a show like this, sometimes I don't care about being spoiled, but this particular one, I figured, you might want to watch it and figure out what's going on as you watch it and not hear it from me. So like I said, the show kind of spans like several time frames. It's basically the main part of the show takes place in the present day, in that show's present day. I'm not sure where it is as far as compared to present day in the real world or not. It's its own reality or whatever. But the main part of the show takes place in that present day. And in that present day, you have 6 superheroes. They got some kind of superhero powers. I think they've had the powers 90 years. And they have children. And they're and like the main character, the main superhero, which is the Utopian, he's the one that's sort of like the matriarch of the whole superhero group. His powers are similar to like a Superman or something like that. So basically what you have is that he has 2 children. He has his son, who goes by the name of Paragon. Then he also has a daughter, which I think his daughter doesn't even have a superhero name. They just call her Chloe. Then his wife also has powers, But the thing is that, the Utopian, he is they're older now. They've been doing this for years and years and years, and they're coming to a point where their children will have to take up the mantle. He kind of thinks that he either maybe one day will get killed himself, or he just may retire from the business. And he has been training his children, trying to train his children throughout their whole lives to follow the code. This whole superhero group, they got like a code that they follow. That's how they are superheroes. That's how they conduct themselves. It's a pretty strict code, and it's he's been bringing his two children up the whole time, following this code, trying to teach them to, take up the mantle when him and his wife, which his wife's name is Lady Liberty. So you have that part of the story. You got the kids, and of course, growing up like that as the two children, it's impossible to live up to those standards, So what you have here is that you got the son and the daughter, they both got superpowers. But you have the son who kind of like struggling his whole life, trying to live up to his father's standards. And he always feel like underappreciated and all of this kind of stuff. And then you have the daughter who just feels like her father didn't do enough for them growing up. She's kind of upset with the family. She kind of don't have anything to do with the whole superhero group. She kind of like does her own thing and don't want to be bothered. She's like mad at the world, She's kind of like got a little emo thing going on, So you have those two things. You have the son who feels like he can't live up to his father's standards, and he got the daughter that's just, pretty, tired of trying to live up to her father's standards and feel like she's just been brought up, horribly growing up, So that's the main part of the story. That's the main story. Well, that's one of the themes in the story. But like I said, it's broken into several different themes. Now they have a flashback story that they tell throughout the series, which basically takes you way back to the 1920s before any of those characters got their powers. And it goes through the whole ordeal about how they got their powers, which was a pretty interesting story. Me personally, I felt like that whole story, which is spanned throughout the whole series for the most part, in flashback scenes that like took up like, maybe about a third of each episode, letting you know what's going on. I kind of felt like that whole story could have been told in one episode, to me, it wasn't. I mean, I did want to know how they got their powers. I did want to know that story, but the story itself to me was not interesting enough to spread it out amongst the whole season like they did. But then again, if you're interested in the characters, if you're invested in the whole world that is being built in Jupiter's Legacy, you do want to know the story. You do want to know how they got their powers and what they had to go through to get them. So that's two themes you have. First, you got the children, which they are both of the kids in their own way. They have their own issues with being a part of this family. They have their own relationship with the family and the father and mother and everything. And then you got the flashback storyline that goes on throughout the whole season, which tells a story about how the first 6 people got their powers. You have that, but then you got the third part of the story, and what that is that they follow this code, the strict code. The Utopian, the main guy, he got this strict code that everybody follows, and the problem with that code is that now, after 90 years of them doing this, the code has kind of become outdated. The villains that they fight, the super villains that they fight, they're moved beyond the code. They're not following the code anymore. At one time, I guess in the past, everyone followed the code, whether you were a villain or a superhero. But now it's to the point where the villains, they don't follow they don't follow that code. They do whatever they want. And it's making it harder for the superheroes to try to do things like they've always done when they're playing by different rules. They're playing by different rules, which a lot of people feel are outdated, So you have that going on. It's like a struggle, a lot of the younger heroes, because over the years, they bring new heroes in and new people have powers. The children of the original 6 that got the powers, they'll have their power and they're trained. But like the younger generation that's coming up, that are now adults and are now fighting alongside the original 6, they're all kind of feeling like that they just, like things are not working. There needs to be a change, and you got that going on. So you got like 3 separate themes going on in this series, which makes it interesting. It kind of give you that broad feel, sort of like how when you watch that TV show Game of Thrones, you got all of these different storylines going on and you're trying to keep up with what's going to happen with this person and what's going to happen with this group. You got kind of like that same feel on a little bit lesser level in Jupiter's Legacy, you know, like those shows like that. And it makes it interesting. And it all depends on how interested you are in the characters. And I have to say that while I was interested in the characters, they never really grabbed me to a point where I just kind of like got lost in the series. I watched it to the end and I liked it, but I never really got lost in the series. It was just a decent show. You know, I kind of just enjoyed it for what it was. It's nothing that I felt like I would go, actually I would, if somebody asked me did I like it, I would say yes, but it's nothing that I would volunteer a recommendation to somebody, you know, if you know, just out of the blue like that, if I wasn't asked ahead of time. But yeah, you got those three themes going on, and there's more to it. You know, I'm leaving out stuff that kind of, you know, build it out a little bit more because, you know, it might be better if you watch it and you find out this stuff on your own, you know. But yeah, that's Jupiter's Legacy, and it was pretty good. And generally, you know, I say I liked the show. I didn't love it, but I liked it. I thought it was a good enough show. I feel like if this is Netflix's first foray into the Mark Millar universe, you know, I feel like it's a decent universe. I actually want to see a second season. I don't know if there's any plans for a second season, but I do want to see a second season, as this season kind of ended making me want more, making me want to you know, see what else is going to happen, you know, beyond the aftermath of this season, because something pretty significant happens at the end of this season that kind of makes me think, yeah, it has to be a second season. They can't just leave it like this, you know. One thing I can say about this show that kind of was a little bit distracting to me was that two of the characters, like I said, it takes place in different eras in time. It takes place in the 20s, when the main 6 superheroes, before they got their powers, you know, was like back in the 1920s. And then it takes place in the show's present day, which, you know, they're saying that it takes place 90 years after they got their powers, you know, which I'm guessing once they got their powers, they aged a little bit slower than a normal person, because they were older, but they didn't look like, you know, they didn't look 90 years old or anything. But one of the things that was distracting was two of the characters, the main character, and then sort of like his partner. I'm thinking this character was his brother. He went by the name of Brainwave. They both kind of had like a makeup job in the present day because they were supposed to be older. And their makeup job was kind of distracting a little bit. It was like whenever they were on the screen in those scenes, all I'm doing is looking at their face, looking at their makeup job. It was kind of distracting. It was kind of hard for me to get into the storyline when they were on the scene, which luckily they weren't the main storyline. I mean, their characters are the main characters, but there was a lot of other story going on where you didn't have to always look at them to find enjoyment of the screen. On my case, you know, some people may not bother, but it bothered me a little bit. But yeah, I like the show. I would say give it a watch. It's on Netflix. And it's a good show if you like to watch like a superhero show, because there was superhero stuff, there was superhero battles and fights and people with powers and stuff. They all kind of seem interchangeable for the most part to me. They all kind of seem like they all had the same powers, and there was really nothing too different or special about them. As a matter of fact, just before I started recording this video, I realized I didn't even know any of the characters' names, and I had to go and do a Google search so I can look at the names to figure out what their names were. But yeah, that's how interchangeable all of those people were. It was like I didn't even know what their names were, you know. But yeah, but I still enjoyed the show, and I suggest you give it a watch. If you like superhero shows, I would say give it a watch. It's pretty good. And it gives you that feel. It kind of tries to give you that broad, overarching, sweeping story type feel. I wouldn't say it's completely successful, but it tries, and it may hold you. You know, it may be enough there to hold you off until something else comes along that really has a really engrossing, involving story that you can get lost into. But that's Jupiter's Legacy. It's on Netflix. Go check it out. It's about 10 episodes, and it's a good show. It's a pretty good show. So go ahead and check it out. And thank you for watching this show. And thank you for watching this episode. And you know, make sure if you like this video, make sure you click the like button. Go ahead and leave a comment and check and click subscribe. And while you're at it, you know, go ahead and check out that video right there. You know, that was pretty good. Or that one right there. You know, that one's pretty good too. So I'll say check both of them out. And thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.